Here are 10 questions that I feel an atheist needs to answer if they're going to be consistent in what they believe.
And there I was thinking, like the idiot that I be, the only question that atheists need to be able to answer to be consistent with the fact that they don't believe in God is, do you believe in God? And for them to go like, nah. And that's about it. But what do I know? It's only a thing I talk about constantly with people who clearly don't know what the hell they're talking about.
In doing so, if you wish to respond, please respond by dealing with arguments. Don't attack people and just try to discredit people because you don't want what they have to say to be heard by other people.
Well, first off, I'll answer however the hell I want. The way I speak is the way I speak. If you feel attacked when you say something stupid, and I point that out by saying, it's stupid, that seems like a you problem. Treating people with kid gloves doesn't seem to help anyone. And second, discrediting someone, the only way you can really discredit someone is by showing them say something, which discredits them. So basically, you don't want people to point out where you're being wrong. Not gonna happen, mate. Finally, the last thing I want is no one hearing these things. This shit is always hilarious.
Also, as you go through this, I'd like you to take it seriously because really,
Well, of course you want me to take you seriously. And goddamn, I try, man. But at a certain point, if the juggling clown drops the balls for the 20th time in a row, I'm going to start assuming that he doesn't actually know how to juggle.
You don't have good answers to these questions. Perhaps your belief as an atheist is based on blind faith.
That's not as brilliant a statement as you think it is, dude, since my belief is no belief, at least as far as the atheism goes. I can't have blind faith that I don't believe in unicorns. I am unconvinced of their existence. That requires the opposite of faith. If anything, it's a simple lack of credulity.
Question number 1. If there is no God, why is there anything at all?
You know what's a serious answer? I don't know, mate. I don't have to know because me being an atheist makes no claims to the reason for stuff. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't answers for that at relative levels of completion. But if you think my consistency of not buying your claims has anything to do with that, I don't know how to help you. Unlike far too many theists, if you told me that you don't know, I wouldn't then decide that means that some unprovable bullshit thing that I made up gets to be true. Because any answer is better than no answer. No answer is way better than a wrong one. End of story.
This is another angle on where did the universe come from without a creator. If you want to say, well, the Big Bang, great. I'd go for Big Bang. But God lit the fuse. God set it all in motion.
Is he not even going to do the, well, where ran Big Bang do from? Although, he still has an answer to slide in there. That again is an answer that you don't just get to put there because you want it to go there. You have to actually prove things if you want others to accept them. Well, others who aren't complete idiots.
Where did your Big Bang come from?
Okay, never mind. And again, I don't know doesn't change shit as usual, but that doesn't mean there aren't answers. Answers that function within a worldview that contains atheism. For starters, the Big Bang is not the first step of the universe. The maths traces back to what we call the singularity, which appears to be an infinite point of energy or matter or whatever. And then before that, who knows? There's a lot of speculation, but there are many things that it could be. And I'm happy to admit that it could even be magic, man, God or otherwise. But it also could be previous universe or some object making object. That doesn't hurt me, whatever it turns out to be. Personally, I'm hoping that it turns out to be a giant chicken nugget. No, that's it. That's the explanation. Just chicken nugget. Makes sense to me, and that means it gets to be true.
Has anything ever been observed to happen without a cause?
No, but has anything ever been observed to happen because a god did it though? No? Then shockingly, I don't buy your explanation. Look at that. It's almost like my atheism remains perfectly consistent.
Okay. By the way, don't bother with the where did God come from argument. God, by definition, is self-existent.
You can't just define something into existence. And I know exactly where God came from. The brains of humans. That is the only consistent explanation for the existence of any God. Human brains. That's why I keep trying to get him to come out of them. But mostly, it just seems to be all this goo.
And pre-existed this universe. In other words, when God created the universe, he created time along with it. There was no before or after at that point.
It's such a weird claim because essentially you have this apparently infinite being who did absolutely nothing for forever, which is, infinite, but somehow he was able to actually start doing anything. That's a bit of a thinker. And yeah, for no reason he does a universe. Cool, but what makes you think he didn't do the same shit before that? Oh, right, because you're so desperate to be special.
So, that argument just doesn't do any good.
If you say so.
Second question. Where is the evidence that life could have begun without intelligent interference?
Where? Well, for starters, in the existence of life. I mean, if there is no life maker and life exists, there you go. But where exactly is the evidence that life needs an intelligent creator? Because, well, have you seen a being create life? Other than things banging, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here. I think we all know that. But the answer is going to be no. Or yes, my book, though. And that's not evidence. That's a claim.
How can matter existing and moving randomly without any volition, without any will or anything else, become what's necessary for life and then become alive?
Well, there's a lot of study that's gone into that shit, but essentially, as my stupid brain understands it, it would be various chemicals are attracted to each other, and they can form things like RNA strands and protective shells. So the strand and the shell make a rudimentary cell that can also absorb more matter and create copies of itself. Anything that can make copies of itself is going to start making various different versions of itself, and so on and so forth, and then boom, monkeys and trees and sharks and shit. Yeah, it's a terrible explanation that I've obviously butchered, but the science is doing this, and the explanations, they hold up to fair scrutiny when they're not made by me. But even mine are a lot better than, there was this guy, right, who for no reason decided to everything, and now he really cares if you touch your cock. It's a bit weird when you put it like that.
So, take a good look at that. Tell me what you think.
A good look at what? All you said was, where do am life? And I don't remember if you said it, but I know that you assume God though. And here's the thing about assuming. Say it with me now. It makes you sound like a big dumb who doesn't know shit. Also ass. And I think that's a lesson to us all.
Question 3. How can evolution explain features of irreducible complexity apart from intelligent intervention?
Well, that one's simple. There is no irreducible complexity in biology. Show me the creature that has exactly what it needs to exist. It likely doesn't exist because everything is based on iteration. And the thing about iteration is some shit inevitably gets left in. And if you think humans are irreducibly complex, you clearly haven't opened enough of them up. I mean, look at this shit. You really think this thing is necessary? I mean, this guy clearly getting along fine without his brain, if he ever even had one in the first place.
And what I'm talking about is features that we see in creatures today, such as wings. Wings on birds. Birds supposedly evolved from reptiles, and those wings before this evolution were legs, forelimbs, arms, whatever you might want to call that.
You think bird wings are irreducibly complex? What are you talking about? Humans have created functional wings that are far less complex than bird wings. And don't tell me that birds wouldn't be way better like this one. Exactly.
And you need to be able to say and demonstrate that each stage that was necessary in their steps of evolving these wings was a benefit to that creature all along the way. In other words,
I mean, I still don't have to prove shit, but yeah, the steps from arm to wing are conceptually rather simple. a creature with some amount of extra mass on its arms or legs is likely to be able to do things that other creatures can't. I mean, look at the flying squirrel, for example. That's just skin flaps. The squirrels with more of that are able to jump further than the ones who don't, so are more successful. That's going to get bigger and their flight time will likely improve. Perhaps they start flapping and that extends the flight time even further, increasing its feeding range exponentially. I think you can see how this, if left for long enough, could develop into a form of primitive flight, and so on. This really isn't that complicated.
This creature whose legs began to be wings would have become less worthwhile as legs. How is he more survivable than a creature who has experienced no change and has perfectly good legs?
Because, right, environments change, dumbass. It's called adaptation for a reason. That's the problem with all of your assumptions, that everything stays exactly the same. The food sources never run out. The location doesn't flood, and earthquakes don't impact geography. So there's no reason for any change. Also, it doesn't account for niches. Yeah, sure, Leggy McGee can carry on using the same food source, but if the wings legs granted access to an untapped food source, suddenly Legwings doesn't even need to compete with anything for food, and its numbers will literally explode. God damn it, man. If you learned anything about the subjects, you would know not to ask stupid questions. Yeah, that was my bad. We've all got to say something stupid at some point. That's just fair.
So, let's see that. Question 4. How can the evolutionary model be true, since the fossil record clearly shows most major groups emerging at the same time?
Oh, god damn it, the Cambrian explosion thing. That's what this is going to be, isn't it? You know, that thing that doesn't say what you guys think it does. Of course he doesn't know.
I'd like you to Google Cambrian explosion and see what I'm talking about there.
Oh dip, look who's right. Yeah, no, this is dumb for many reasons, but one of the major ones is there are things that come before the Cambrian explosion. If your God did it, quote unquote, explanation that you think this is proof for made any sense, then there would be nothing before then, and that is simply not the case. Also, not forgetting that it was over 500 million years ago, and while I don't want to assume anything about you, if you are a creationist, which is, you know, really likely, then it doesn't demonstrate anything that you believe it does. It's actually a pretty good argument against it.
Stephen Jay Gould, who was the foremost proponent of evolution for years and years, now deceased, said that the dirty little secret of evolution was that the fossil record does not show gradual change.
Okay, aside from the fact that quote mine is quote mine, let's assume that this is 100% accurate to what he means and he is somehow refuting evolution in this statement. Well, he isn't, because that would be dumb. The fact of the matter is, if you expect every single tiny little change, well, you aren't going to find it. The fossil record is not a comprehensive thing. It can't be. But the fact of the matter is, the very essential that you can see where those changes could go show that the changes happened. Every time you ask, where's the transition from X to X? You are admitting that they appear to be transitions, whether you like it or not.
He's right. It doesn't. And yet, we have been told since Darwin that gradual change is what happened. Very small steps. They're not in the fossil record.
Your mum's not in the fossil record. Nah, that's not fair. There she is. And she's doing very well, but she does need you to call her more. She's very worried about you. And who wouldn't be? This mofo clearly needs some help opening one-way doors. The flat plate means push, mate.
Darwinism and the evolutionary model is now becoming like the old story of the emperor's new clothes. People fear to publicly question it, but in private they do. And many of them have gone ahead and stepped out and put their names on lists of people who publicly declare that the Darwinian model does not account for what we see in nature today.
It is amazing to me how they could just completely contradict themselves in the same sentence. You can't do this. Also, loads of people have done that. And it's weird that they never seem to be experts in the fields that they say am big wrong, though. And the experts are absolutely fine with what it shows. It's almost like they know something that the others don't.
Don't bother with telling me that all of those people are kooks. You know, we're talking PhD level scientists from, you name it, universities and such.
They are kooks, at least when it comes to science that they claim is unconvincing when they have literally no idea what they're talking about. They are never people who are authorities on the subject, but engineers or physicists or whatever. And even the biology boys among them tend to be in fields that don't require them to understand evolution to be successful. As I always say, asking these people about evolution is like asking your accountant to repair a wall. Maybe they might know something about it. Maybe they might even do an okay job, but you are definitely going to actually get more consistent results from well-regarded professional plasterers 99% of the time, because duh.
Deal with arguments, don't deal with your opinions on people's personalities and personal worth.
Again, I'll do what I want, and if their qualifications are irrelevant, then I'm going to take their opinions at the same level as any other dickhead who doesn't know what they're talking about, and see if it's based in the science. And what's that? The ones you like are all creationists? Well, no shit, they don't believe the actual science when it disagrees with that.
If there is no, this is question 5, if there is no objective standard of right or wrong, which was furnished by the Creator, how can anything be wrong?
Because objective standards are based on objects, you don't. Even God is a subject, not an object. So his standards are in fact subjective. And you know what? I do base my morality on objective things, like pain and suffering, things that affect everyone. So if you do something that would hurt someone, regardless of what they believe, I am going to consider that a good thing, because fuck people. Anything that puts them in their place must be applauded.
If man is the result of mere chance, a combination of atoms that just happened, then why is there any value in life whatsoever?
Because people value things. Value comes from people, not the universe or whatever. I don't believe in objective value anyway, but that doesn't mean value doesn't exist as a concept. And it doesn't mean that I wouldn't get to value things. Like the objectively best object, whiskey.
On what objective truth do you base your morality, if any? What can you point to that says one murdering babies is any less desirable way to increase food supply than harvesting fruit from trees?
Because if you kill all the babies, humans will stop, you moron. But you really don't even want to start with the babies thing, because if you know anything about your particular god, man, he clearly fucking hates those things. I mean, it's his one redeeming quality, frankly.
Don't try diverting this argument by asking what makes my religion the right one. That's a side debate. We'll get to that later.
Don't make points at me. I'm not prepared to give any answers for that. Man, the constant pre-deflection is something else in this video.
Question 6. Which is the logically defensible position? That matter eternally existed, or else it came into existence all by itself for no reason. And then it arranged itself into extraordinarily complex living systems, including not only mechanisms, but huge amounts of information that's needed for life to function. This being against everything that we've ever observed in science, where things moved towards disorder left on their own, as opposed to moving towards more order. Or the other position that an eternal self-existing being, definition of God, infinite intelligence, infinite power, created life and the information systems necessary for life to exist all at once.
Oh, that was a lot, and yet can be swept away with so little. That, for one, is a false dichotomy. Those aren't the only two options. There are, in fact, way more. And second, you completely misunderstand how entropy works. You are talking about closed systems, when the Earth, you know, where this shit has happened, is not a closed system. It acquires additional energy from outside itself, making the shit not only possible, but downright likely to happen.
This is only a problem if you have a preconceived belief that God does not exist.
It's not even a problem. And atheism, by today's standards that most atheists use, is that I don't buy your shit. That doesn't preconceive anything. Again, it's the opposite, like they say. It's the belief system to the TV channel of off.
What place do preconceptions have in scientific inquiry?
That God did it, apparently?
7. Natural selection requires that something be alive and reproducing for it to for natural selection to operate. It cannot be alive and reproducing without a huge amount of DNA operating the life functions inside the cell. So what came first? The code in the DNA or the organism that depends on it for life?
As usual, this misunderstands how evolution works, because essentially the answer is yes. Both of them would have come around at around the same time. A thing that is a reproducing organism that has the things that are needed to call it life happened when it obtained those things.
How can natural selection produce something that is a prerequisite for natural selection to operate?
Because it didn't.
Number 8. If scientists almost totally accept that a signal from outer space containing information that could be interpreted as a string of prime numbers would be proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, why would they not accept that the information coding in the nucleus of the simplest cells, DNA, which is equivalent to the information in a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica, was the result of intelligence?
Because we know how it doesn't need to be. Also, the coding is almost gibberitic in its expression, almost like it was created by a process rather than being specifically coded by a thing. That's why human readable code looks like this, but code spat out by a machine looks like this. If biology had human readable demonstrations, then maybe you would have a point.
Number 9. What if God is real, as described in the Bible, and you have to stand before him and give an account for your life? Do you have a list of reasons already for why you never accepted it? Under close scrutiny, will those reasons betray the fact that you don't want to believe, and will stick with anything that sounds good rather than look too closely?
I have plenty of reasons. None of them do I have to justify to any being who thinks the best way to communicate with people is via vague nonsensical texts that make no sense when placed under the same scrutiny that you think will be made of me, and they simply fold. And this has nothing to do with me not buying God as a concept. There are a lot more gods that are, well, as equally unlikely. But what if you came up and it was one of them? What would your excuse be? That's right, you weren't convinced of that other shit.
Number 10.
Finally, here we go, boys. Let's see if he can make me do a not atheism anymore.
If I answered all your objections to your satisfaction, would you submit your life to Jesus or recognize God as your creator?
If you convinced me, you would have convinced me. And I would be convinced. But you didn't say that. And well, just because you answered my questions to my satisfaction, that would not mean that I accept any of them as correct, does it? Satisfactory is hardly ever a glowing assessment. But frankly, even if you got that close, well, that'd be the fucking day, wouldn't it, mate?
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel Spoonstaff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the